I don't know where she is. Is she? Oh, there she comes. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. Like he said, my name is Sarah Vitorino. In about 3.5 weeks, every last one of you is going to call me doctor. So that's all you need to remember. Thanks. I'm 29 years old. I'm graduating from a PhD program, and I want you to know that I have baggage. I came here today with my baggage. I have a whole past. I have ups and downs. I have triumphs and tragedies. I come with all of that to present to you today. So you're probably wondering, what do I have in this bag? Well, let me show you. What do I mean by baggage? Well, I've got stuff in here. Sorry about this, just random. Some stuff here. We'll get to the real meat of it. You never really know when you'll need a good whoopee cushion. I don't know how I got this guy in here. I'll have you know I earned every last one of these stripes. Little Portuguese rooster for my roots. A softball. How predictable. Not really sure how that got in there. I think I read this book, first few pages, and throughout my whole graduate career, that's all I read. And of course, a few skeletons, right? We've all got skeletons in our closet. But in addition to kind of the funny, lighthearted stuff, there's also some heavier things that I carry in my past. There's struggles that I've had to overcome. There's being the child of first-generation Americans, being the child of immigrant parents, having to deal with some of the challenges of having a tough childhood, and having to deal with maybe having some relationships that have been painful along the way. But of course, we all have obstacles. We also have lighthearted things about us that make us who we are. One thing I don't have in my luggage, one thing I don't carry with me, is a criminal record. Not because I haven't earned one, because I haven't really got caught. But I'm really grateful that I don't, because there's so many challenges in life that we all have to encounter, things like the economy, healthcare, having to deal with paying the bills, credit card debt, student loans. It's almost finals, right? There's challenges that we all have to encounter, we all have to struggle, we all have to deal with. But having a criminal record, for women who've been incarcerated, all those challenges get multiplied by the virtue of the fact that you have to carry the stigma of a criminal record with you for the rest of your life. So let me tell you a little bit about women who've been incarcerated. 80% of the women who've been incarcerated have been abused at some point in their lives, mostly starting in childhood. Sexual abuse, physical abuse. This kind of abuse often led to them running away from home, living on the streets. While they were living on the streets, a lot of them got involved with drugs, started becoming addicted to drugs, used prostitution to help pay for their habits. These women were struggling. In addition to that, they have to deal with the fact that most of us, when they think criminal record, we have all kinds of ideas, all kinds of negative ideas that these women need to contend with. That kind of discrimination, that stigma, they carry that with them. Not only that, having a criminal record denies you access to housing, to employment. You think finding a job with a degree from Emory is hard? Try having a criminal record on your resume, right? I hear students talk all the time about having this great idea. How about we do a gap year before we go on to graduate school? In this crisis of the gap year. Try having a gap decade on your resume, where an employer is like, okay, so what happened between 2000 and 2010? I got nothing here. So the thing about it, I was in prison, right? That's never going to fall well. Not only that, these women have to deal with the fact that they've been incarcerated and spent all this time in an institution that tells them what to do, what to think, what to say, what to feel for a period of time, and then re-enter society in a way that, from a perspective that basically they're on their own. They have to figure it out on their own. So it should come as no surprise to you then, with all these obstacles, with all the challenges that all of us face every day, that 2/3 of the women who leave prison end up back in prison within the first 3 years of their release. That's 2/3. Not surprising, though. These obstacles are real. These challenges are real. But I'm not here to talk to you about why people fail. I'm here to talk to you about why people succeed. Notice I didn't say 100% of the people who leave prison end up back in prison. I said 2/3. So that begs the question, what about that other third? What's their story?
It wasn't easy. Life wasn't easy. 18 years being incarcerated, and life still is not easy. But every day, you take one day at a time and you grow every day. And keep your head up, because guess what? You can make it. You can make it out here. You can. You can.
You just heard a quote from Tanya. Tanya's in her late 50s. She spent 18 years being incarcerated for driving the getaway van for an armed robbery. Tanya deals with all the obstacles that I just talked about, but she also deals with the fact that when she got out of prison, the whole world had undergone this digital revolution that she was totally oblivious to. She was like a modern-day Encino Man. She came out like, cell phones, internet, World Wide Web, WTF? Like, what does this all mean? So she has to come out of prison with this institutional mindset and totally adjust to this life in the fast lane. She told me that the first time she went to a fast food restaurant when she got out of prison, she stood there looking at the menu and thought, oh my God. She spent 30 minutes staring at the menu, frozen. She had forgotten, in those 18 years of incarceration, she had forgotten how to make a decision about what she wanted to eat. She said, no one's asked me what I wanted to eat in 18 years. I don't even remember how to do that. She ended up leaving the restaurant without ordering anything because she felt so overwhelmed by it. These are the real kinds of challenges that women face. But you heard her say, don't get it twisted. You can make it out here. You can. But how and why? How do people succeed? How could you possibly succeed with all those obstacles? How do they do it? Well, that, my friends, is my research question. How and why do some women succeed? How do they overcome the obstacles when so many women are unable to do that? So to answer that question, I interviewed 20 women who've been incarcerated in Georgia, and I asked them to tell me their life story. I asked them, how do you do it? How do you make it out here? And they were kind of reluctant at first. Like, who is this? Is she with the feds? And when I assured them that I was not, that the feds would not hire me, they started to feel a little more comfortable. And I said, and they said, well, what are you even after here? Why are you even doing this? And I said, hey, look, this is totally up to you. You don't have to share your story with me, but I want to use these stories. I want to use your advice, and I want to share it with women who are still in prison, in the hopes that someday that it can maybe help them with their transition. And I also want to share it with everyday people, and maybe in the hopes that they will help them with their situations. And they were like, oh, so you're doing this to try to help people? Like, my story could help somebody? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And they were like, okay, all right. So they shared their stories with me. They shared their most intimate details with me. Most of them had said to me, no one's ever asked me about my life story before. It was a really huge privilege for me to be in that position. And I'm going to share with you what they told me. I'm going to share with you some of the strategies that these women use to succeed in difficult times. But I want you to keep these in mind, not just in the event that you end up walking out of prison someday, which some of us might, but to keep in mind that in doing this research, I learned that these strategies that these women were using are the very same strategies that survivors of trauma and abuse use. These are the strategies that veterans use coming back from war, and also the strategies that CEOs, highly successful people in our society, same strategies they use to overcome challenges and achieve success. So let me start with the first strategy. There is power in perspective. Even though Metro was so hard, it helped me. All the little classes I took, I enjoyed them because the teachers, they helped me to understand, to want to be something better, to want to do better when you finally get out. This was Denise, she's 28. This is an example of women's ability to transform the most negative experiences of their lives into something positive and empowering and meaningful. So she's talking about Metro as the prison that she was incarcerated in. It was hard. It was horrible. It was the worst experience of her life. She doesn't wish it on her worst enemy. But at the same time, she decided to say, hey, but there were aspects of it that helped me. In that process, she transformed that experience from negative into something positive. The women who were successful knew how to do this to a T. They knew exactly how to transform negative experiences in their lives into positive experiences, and their stories had evidence of this over and over. They also realized that with time, your perspective can change, right? The more distance we have from something difficult and painful, the easier it is to kind of interpret it. For example, think about your first crush, right? First crush, maybe it was elementary school, maybe it also led to your first heartache, right? I still remember my first crush. It was my second grade teacher. She was a goddess. Goddess. She was amazing. I mean, for reasons that you can probably figure out, it didn't work out. But within the past year or so, and with the help of a good therapist, I'm really starting to get over it. And I think that now I'm starting to realize that maybe it wasn't meant to be, and maybe there are other fish in the sea. But not only this, these women also transformed their negative experiences into positive ones as a result of having done this other step. These women took a good look at themselves. They started by facing themselves in the mirror. They looked at exactly all of the things that they had done wrong in life. They looked at their shame. They confronted their obstacles. In other words, they started with the one in the mirror. And they asked them to start changing their ways. They looked deep at the person looking back at them, and they looked at all the shame that they were carrying. They looked at all the negative identities they internalized. They looked at being a victim, being a criminal, being a screw-up. They looked at all of those things within themselves, and they took them out of their baggage, and they left them behind. They transformed their identities from negative into positive. Instead, they replaced that with, no, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor. I'm not a screw-up, I learned from my mistakes. I'm not ashamed of my past, I'm proud of the person I've become. Successful women had the power and the wisdom to use their perspective to turn tragedy into triumph. And as a result, they were better for it. Another strategy they used, they were open to relationships. I've been putting myself out there and being me and letting people see the person that I am, not the person they may think I am or was. That's Charisse, 34. It's a no-brainer. Being open to relationships? Of course. Why wouldn't you be open to relationships? But you have to remember, these are people who have been abused, have been beaten, have been traumatized by relationships. These are people who have every right to write off relationships altogether forever, right? So the idea of putting themselves out there is one of the most terrifying things that they could possibly imagine. But it was also so important, right? We know how important relationships are. Think about it. If you had 0 friends on Facebook, 0 followers on Twitter, 0 connections on LinkedIn, and then imagine having to pick up the pieces of your life, pick up all these pieces by yourself. Think of how challenging that struggle would be.
Sarah.
Hey.
What are you doing?
Just,
this is your TED Talk.
I'm trying to get my life together.
Do you need some help with this stuff?
That would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
A dually? Really?
I'm sorry, I just had to. I couldn't resist. It's for the crowd,
But
please.
Sarah!
Give me that. All right.
Come on. Get faster.
All right.
How did you get all this stuff in here?
Yeah, thanks for your help. Just stick it in. Doesn't matter how it goes. All right. Okay. Oh.
Do you
Wow.
got it?
Thanks.
Are you sure?
I got this.
You need anything else?
No, I got this.
All right. Good.
All right.
Good luck.
Thanks, Chels. Relationships are important. Why? because they help us cope with the challenges of our lives. They help us put the pieces of our lives back together. And if you're starting from scratch, building your life all over again with no relationships, that can seem impossible. But what these women found is that when they were open to relationships, those relationships connected them to all kinds of other resources. One relationship connected them to another relationship, connected them to a resource or a community. Let me give you an example. Rachel, she's in her early 30s. Somebody I interviewed. Rachel was given up for adoption at a very young age. I think she was like an infant still, and put into foster care. She was put into the first foster family situation for just a very short period of time because she was found to be abused right off the bat. She was moved from one foster home to another foster home. In the second foster home, she was essentially being sold into a kind of child sex slavery ring by her foster parents. So from that home situation, she went to another. And then she went to therapy, which I swear by. But for the rest of us, therapy seems to be something like we can trust. For her, she was being abused by her therapist. This is the kind of situation she grew up with. These are the cards that she was dealt. Well, when she got to middle school, she found herself in the playground, and she noticed that there was this girl being bullied by some other students. So she went over to them and said, hey, and she kind of defended her and protected her, and before long, they became fast friends. Well, in spending time with this friend, she got to know her mother, and over time, developed this bond with this mother, and then the mother, after a while, said, hey, I just love you like you were my own kid. I think I'm going to adopt you. And she was like, oh my God, really? Like, wow, this is amazing. And so all of this paperwork is about to go through, and just before she's about to be adopted, this woman is tragically killed in a car accident, like weeks before. And as she's telling me this story, I'm like, I'm waterworks, okay? Like, I'm pulling at the tissues that I bring for the participants I'm interviewing. Really, it's me. And she's like, no, it's okay, you'll be all right. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. So I'm getting the tissues, and I'm like, wow, I mean, that's a horrible story, wow. And she goes, no, it was the most amazing experience of my life. I got to know a mother's love, even for just a short period of time. Some people don't get to know that their entire lives. So when she said that to me, it just kind of blew me away. Like, wow, how could you have that perspective on something so tragic? It was really powerful. But if you notice, her being open to this friendship in the playground connected her to a mother, and it almost led to an adoption, right? So relationships connect us to other people, but they also can connect us to resources. But even with a whole team of support, success isn't easy. Abigail Van Buren said, if you want a place in the sun, you got to put up with a few blisters. We all know this. Hard work, determination, if you want to achieve any kind of goal. Faith in action. This is another strategy that women used. I know that when that door and 5 others close, I know there is one somewhere. I just got to find it. I know there is one out there. That's Angela. She's 39. These women knew that if they wanted to succeed, they had to have an unrealistic sense of faith. They knew the odds were against them. They had to have this kind of faith, like pie in the sky kind of faith, that somehow, regardless of the odds, they were going to be the ones to make it. They knew that they had to walk up to the door and knock on it at least 100 or 200 or 300 times before at least one person would peek around and say, yeah, who's there? They knew that they had to apply to hundreds of jobs before they would get one call back, and they were determined. They heard rejection after rejection after rejection, and they never gave up. They had faith that they would succeed, and they followed it up with action, and it worked. The other strategy that these women used was keeping a positive mind. I said to them, God, I don't know how you do it. I mean, there's all these challenges. How can you possibly deal with that? And almost all of the people I interviewed said, I keep a positive mind. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? Have you ever told somebody about your problem, and you found out they had a worser problem than you? And then your problem got to be a smaller problem because now you're thinking about, dog, all I needed was $20. This woman needs 1,000. Oh my God, your $20 need just falls into place. This is Rose. She's 72. This is a perfect example of how these women were able to look at their situation and put it into perspective and somehow find a way to feel grateful for their situation. Now, we all know what gratitude is. We've all had a feeling or an experience of gratitude. What was so amazing about these women is how grateful they were for their circumstances. Now, keeping a positive mind for them meant that regardless of all the things that were standing in their way, regardless of all the things that could come in the way of their success, They were going to focus on what was going right in their lives, and they were going to keep all of their energy attention onto what was going right and positive. It was interesting. When I was actually working on this analysis, I was walking by the Goizueta Business School, and I walked by this fountain, and there's a sculpture right beside the fountain, and on that sculpture is engraved a quote. It says, "Whatever is pure, whatever is true, whatever is admirable, whatever is righteous, if anything is excellent and worthy of gratitude, think about these things." It's actually a biblical verse. It's from Philippians 4:8. When I saw that, I said, holy shit, that's exactly what those women were talking about. And it really blew me away, because that's what it means, focusing on what is going right rather than what might be going wrong. But sometimes you feel like nothing is going right in your life. I get that. So in those situations, what do? There's nothing to think about. Well, these women had another strategy. It's called, it could be worse. Yes, that's me. Waking up to a surprise photo shoot from my prankster brother and a visit one time in California in 2009. Well, my brother, one of the smartest people I know, decided to post the album to Picasa. And when he did, he accidentally posted it as public instead of private. Since 2009. Unbeknownst to me, this and even more embarrassing gems have been floating around the World Wide Web, okay? So if your situation is difficult and you can't imagine how it could possibly be worse, just be glad that when someone Googles your name, that mug doesn't appear, okay? So here we are. We're all on the road to success. We all want to get there. We all want to achieve the most positive outcomes and realize all of our dreams, for sure. But there are obstacles along the way, and we have to overcome them. We have to overcome those hurdles. How are we going to do that? Well, the women I interviewed taught me a few things. They said, you can turn your tragedies into triumphs. You have the power to interpret your situations. You have the power to transform yourselves. You have the power to look at your situation from a new perspective. They taught me that your outlook can determine your outcome, and that probability is really just a best guess. But there is real power and possibility. These women taught me a lot. But if there's one thing that I learned, it's that whether the odds are stacked against you or in your favor, as Tanya so eloquently stated, you can make it out here. You can. You can, you can, you can, you can.